So, so what we are going to do in these last minutes before we thank everybody, I will give the floor to Fred to recap a little bit what we have heard in these 2 days and what has been his impressions. And well, essentially that's it. And we may have a last turn of discussions, and we'll thank everybody. Fred?
Switch the slides, please.
Okay, well, so first of all, I would like to take the opportunity to thank the rest of the organizing committee, and Liz in particular. This has been an amazing workshop. The organization is absolutely off the charts top. And it's just been a pleasure to work with all of you. And I would like to thank also the participants, because these things don't work without the participants participating the way they did. And it's too bad that we're such a small group here at the end, so the rest of the participants didn't hear that, but it is a universal thank you. And I think one of the things that I'd like to think about is what we do with all the things that we learned and all of the challenges that we identified. So with that as preamble, let me summarize some of the themes, the common themes that seem to stick out to me. And of course, that's my prejudiced summary, and it reflects the sessions that I was able to attend, given all the time constraints we all have. So first of all, I was absolutely struck by the fact that there are a huge number of AI policy initiatives in the world, many more than I would have imagined. And at one point, somebody put up on a slide the count of 700 identified AI initiatives in 60 countries. And I'm sure that's an undercount, but it's fascinating. So the second comment here is that indices were a subject of quite a few of the presentations and the discussions, and they can play an important role in assessing the impact of AI. So, for example, we heard about UNESCO's readiness and impact assessment methodology, and we heard about ethical impact assessment, and we heard about the Human Development Index, and we learned about algorithmic impact assessment. So I would ask, what is it that you can do with all these kinds of indices? So yes, you can compare country to country. Is that always helpful? Not clear. Can you measure the progress that a country makes over time? Yes, but how accurate are you in that assessment, and how confident are you in that assessment? Depends on the index and how you use it. Can you study the impact of policy initiatives? Yes, but how you do that needs to be developed and studied. But there are all kinds of issues that arise around index numbers. For example, do you require technological expertise to use the indices, or are they available to a more widespread audience? Could making an index useful in one application or to one group make it useless in another application or for another group? And I think that was a point that Alexis made that I thought was very interesting. The next comment I'd like to make is that AI can have a wide variety of impacts, considering just the environmental impacts that we heard about, the significant amount of energy that's used in AI algorithms, the vast amount of AI e-waste and the fact that the dumping of that e-waste tends to be in underdeveloped countries. And we heard about Kenya and Bangladesh and so on. And of course, we've heard about other kinds of impacts, including this morning on the newly developing online job market. Then let me turn next to the comment that a lot of the presentations talked about the need to participate in the development and analysis of AI policy. So that participation requires a lot of different stakeholders to be involved in order for it to work. But participation requires resources. It requires time and money and staff and availability of the internet and so on. So right away, there's the problem that those who have those resources may have an advantage in participating. And how do we overcome that potential source of bias? There's also the involvement both of individuals and of organizations in the development of principles about algorithms, the safety of algorithms and their use and so on. Do organizations have a different role to play than individuals? And how do we identify what those respective roles are? And then we talked about machines not having value systems, but only reflecting the value systems that the developers of algorithms give them. And the idea that we should give them human values, but that raises the question of whose human values and how are those reflected in the decisions a machine makes. Well, it's easy to raise questions, by the way. It's much harder to give answers. We spent a lot of time on fairness and explainability throughout this week. I think we concluded that we all want things to be fair and explainable and transparent and interpretable and non-biased and so on, but it's very difficult to give a universal definition of any of those concepts. I was struck by the comment that the simplicity of an explanation might be at the cost of fairness, and that fairness may be harder to understand if you explain it in detail. So that is worth pondering. There's certainly no one correct way to explain decisions, but some explanations may be more helpful than others. And how do we assess that? There's no way, as I've heard, to avoid making subjective choices when you explain the output of an algorithm or a model. And I think that's right. How do we minimize the subjectivity of those choices? And when can we allow a machine to actually produce the explanations without human intervention? So should that explanation depend on context? So can it depend on understanding the background and the situation in which you're the person that you're trying to explain the outcome of a decision to? In which case, can a machine actually do that, or do you need a human to intervene? And by the way, that situation and background is changing, it's dynamic. And so the explanation may differ depending on the time or the state in the changing context that you're at. And of course, it requires resources to allocate to explaining things. And how do we allocate those resources fairly? Sometimes partial disclosure is sufficient because full disclosure may be unhelpful, but partial disclosure can be misleading. And then where are we? So I'm asking questions. Many of these are questions I heard from you. They're worth exploring for sure, and I think we could take more than another week to explore them. Last comment about explainability and fairness and so on is that what's fair to individuals, namely treating them all essentially equally, may be unfair to groups because groups may differ in terms of their makeup. And that is a distinction we need to make. Fairness to groups versus fairness to individuals may not be both achievable. So we talked a little bit about the rights and responsibilities in this environment. Who has the right to use data? And how does one achieve that right? Or how do you get it? And for what purposes are you allowed to use data? And then for that matter, do machines have rights? We heard on the first day about home assistants, for instance. Do home assistants have rights? This gets me into all kinds of issues, and which will take a lot of thinking. And finally, I think technology can lead to problems. There is rushed deployment that we've seen leading to issues. Of course, there are all the issues of bias and unfairness and so on we've been talking about. Those problems can either arise by design or by accident. I thought the by design was a new twist on this that I didn't understand as well until after the talk we had yesterday, the keynote by David Rios-Incia. Especially concerning are those adversarial attacks that he talked about on machine learning. And those attacks, as well as the accidents, can be attacks on data, but also attacks on algorithms. And finally, maybe I should close by commenting, as we've heard, that safety of AI is not the same thing as security of AI. And those things are different. And so we have to think about all those things, the safe uses, the secure uses, and the interplay among humans and machines, both working together, and we heard a little bit today about the future of work at the keynote, but also those who are impacted by those machines and how we use them. So fascinating week for me. I learned an awful lot, and my head is really spinning with directions I'd like to go in. So let me turn it back to Alexis.
Okay, thanks, Fred, for this recap, which summarizes the richness of what we learned these 5 days. Does somebody wants to say a word on that, wants to react on that? I understand that in Australia is almost midnight, so
I will say I'm glad, Fred, that you have come away with so many interesting questions and possible things to work on. I also have come away with those things, and I hope that we're going to be able to find some ways to collaborate on some of these ideas.
Actually, we're not going to stop here. So the algorithmic futures will meet again the 1st and 2nd December in Paris. I hope not online. although I must confess that everybody knows that I am very skeptic about online workshops, no? But I was amazed by how well this one was run. So I have to update my beliefs about online workshops. Now, hopefully we will be physically present, everybody, in Paris, the 1 and 2 of December. No, so get in touch with us if you want to continue the discussion about this these topics. I can anticipate that in May 2023 there will be a summer school in France, no, which will explore a little bit in details these topics. And in that summer school, we are planning to set up a number of benchmarks in healthcare management and in bank services, no, that can be used in order to audit algorithmic systems worldwide. No, that would be one of the let's say of the objectives we have on this topic. So the program goes on. We're working. It's time to thank everybody for organizing that. I will never expect in 2017, when we did with Fred the first meeting in Paris, that it will turn to something like this one. I'm positively impressed by how things are evolving. Thanks, Liz, for organizing that. You did an amazing job. I will never believe that it was possible to organize it that way. Thanks to all the other people that helped, the facilitators, the participants, the organizers, the scientists, the staff that was behind all this scene. I was fascinated how things have been organized. And thanks, of course, to the European Union and the other sponsors, the Dauphine, LAMSA, DIMAX, Australian National University, and the Erasmus Plus program of the European Union, which generally sponsored and sponsors this Algorithmic Futures Policy Lab, through which we are organizing these events. Keep in touch with the site that Liz set up, which is full of information on what happened and what is going to happen in the future. And thanks to everybody for attending and being here.
Thank you, Alexis. That was wonderful. I want to add one very special thanks. I know it's very late, but Kathy has basically taught me how to make something like this run smoothly and has made that possible. And I want to say a very huge special thanks for all of your efforts this week. You did not have to do this, and I am eternally grateful. And you may well very soon have a large quantity of coffee coming your way.
Thank you so much, Liz. It's been an honor to work with such incredible minds and to play a very small part in actively shaping how we change our algorithms to build a better world. So the pleasure's all mine.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone here. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for organizing. Thank you for making it a real thing. And now, if anyone has any final remarks, we can leave it there. But if not, I think some of us need to go to bed.
Yes.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye to everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.